Welcome to this short video that is discussing the assignment on the fifth module on web scraping in I/O. So in this module, I expect that you might be doing some plotting. You should be doing some plotting and using NumPy to perhaps do some work and some functional changes to data. So this is really about you making your own assignment with pandas and the read HTML function of pandas. It is a very open-ended assignment, but there are some constraints and things that you have to do. How deep you go into it is somewhat up to you, but I do give some guidelines here. So for about 45 minutes to an hour, I want you to first go check out this repo. This repo on GitHub has this nice introduction about how to scrape a website with a single line of Python code. And it covers some of what we've done, and it shows some additional information. It's not that long. I recommend that you go through it and even turn this into your own notebook, or you can basically just read through the Jupyter notebook that's provided there. And that notebook is right here. So you can turn this into your own notebook. You could download it and then edit it. I highly recommend to start playing with it. Put it up on the hub and go through and see what's going on. I think that should take about 45 minutes to an hour. It's not as thorough as our lecture, but it does introduce a few tricks for working with a Pandas data frame that were not covered in our lecture. And then what I want you to do, what your problem is, which I think should take between 5 to 8 hours, is to fill in the rest of this assignment notebook with a mixture of markdown and code cells that walk through an analysis of data you scrape from the web. Make sure to describe what the data represents that you're scraping. Make sure to discuss questions, at least 3 questions that you want to answer about the data, and then answer them, of course. Now, your questions have to center on issues around interpreting and analyzing the data in meaningful ways. You are not to just say, here's how I use Pandas data frame to compute a mean. So what? I showed you how to do a bunch of stuff in the lecture notebook. If you're just representing how to use pandas in read HTML to do basic operations like I've shown in the notebook that aren't meaningful to the data, that aren't asking insightful questions, then you will get a 0 for that question. I am looking for at least 3 questions that are meaningful and interesting and centered around the data that are worth interpreting and analyzing that you interpret and answer and analyze. So what you're really trying to do is turn this into a type of report or tutorial. You can show how to do things in Pandas. That's fine, but your 3 main questions have to be more than just here's how I use read Pandas or read HTML to do the following. That should be part of it for sure, but you need to actually have information that's interesting to somebody about the data, that you're arriving at some conclusion or analysis of what it is. Now, you should also show off problems and limitations with the data, how to address these issues or explain why these issues cannot be fixed, etc. So for instance, how I showed that certain data wasn't in the right format for us in the lecture notebook and how I had to change it. That should be fine. That's a good thing to do. I really recommend that. But that's not a question of how do I analyze the data. What question am I interested in answering about the data relative to hypotheses of what's going on with the data. An additional requirement is then at the bottom of this notebook, at the very end, you should also save your data set as a CSV file and show that it can be loaded and analyzed from this file as well. Now, you won't provide that with your upload because when I run your notebook, I will see that the CSV file is created and then uploaded appropriately. So you just have to actually have the commands that do this at the bottom. The notebook linked to above, meaning this notebook, this one right here, he's got some links, I believe, some information in that, in some recommended websites to try scraping. So you can choose one or more of those to explore. And here's some more to check out. Here's some coronavirus mortality data. This is at Johns Hopkins University of Medicine website. So look at this big data table here. So that might be an interesting one to a lot of people. There's this, how many countries are there in the world data? You could just ask some interesting questions about that. You could try to go look up government website information to see what data is interesting there that you can scrape. It has to be amenable to using read HTML. So you're certainly free to choose your own. You can go to ESPN and pull up different types of NBA or NFL or NHL, like sports statistics. Sports websites are very rich in the amount of data that's available for scraping. So if you're interested in sports, that's fine. If you're not, and you're interested in health data, the coronavirus one, but there's also others. There's also lots of economic data to scrape. Wikipedia has a lot of information, so you should really do your own and look around. And if you want, if there's maybe a few websites you want to scrape data from to compare and answer, do that too. It's really up to you. It's meant to be fun and engaging. You spend your own time just exploring and presenting kind of a nice report about what you've seen that shows some interesting questions about the data you found that you want to answer, and then do it. So I look forward to seeing what you do, and feel free to share the data, the websites, and the URLs on the discussion boards of Canvas with your classmates. So that's it. This is a short video. It's a pretty open-ended assignment. If you have questions about any of it, just go ahead and ask on Canvas. Thanks for listening.